Hello.
What's up, weirdo wanderers?
I thought you were going to say bitches.
I've done that. Welcome to another wonderful week.
And this time we actually have, I guess it's a little bit nice. It's not like murdery
Yeah.
or like anybody missing or.
It's a different type of subject than what we've been covering here lately.
Yeah, and I really enjoyed it. I had a hard time getting started on it, but once I got into it, I enjoyed it. And I hope to do more episodes like this.
It's a very springy episode.
Yeah, because it's almost there.
I'm excited. Well, by the time this releases.
Yeah, after this by the time this comes out, it should be.
We are covering fairies. Fae folk.
The Fae.
So if that's not something that interests you,
We won't be offended if you skip.
we won't know.
Yeah,
Really?
we're not going to know. Nobody's going to know.
Nobody's gonna know.
They're going to know.
Anyway, so we're just gonna cruise right on into it. So fairies, where did that get started? Britannica defines fairies as a mythical being of folklore and romance, usually having magic powers and dwelling on Earth in close relationship with humans. It can appear as a dwarf creature, typically having green clothes and hair, living underground or in stone heaps, and characteristically exercising magic powers to benevolent ends. As a diminutive sprite, commonly in the shape of a delicate, beautiful, ageless winged woman dressed in diaphanous white clothing, Jesus, inhabiting fairyland, but making usually well-intentioned intervention in personal human affairs, or as a tiny, mischievous, and protective creature generally associated with a household hearth. Britannica goes on to say, while the term fairy goes back only to the Middle Ages in Europe, analogs to these being in varying forms appear in both written and oral literature, from the Sanskrit Gandharva, semi-divine celestial musicians, to the nymphs of Greek mythology and Homer, the genii of Arabic mythology, and similar folk characters of the Samoans, of the Arctic peoples, and of other indigenous Americans. My tongue is like done.
It would have been done by now.
Right. It is 12:49 in the AM. And I'm tired. The common modern depiction of fairies in children's stories represents a boulderization of what was once a serious and even sinister folkloric tradition. The fairies of the past were feared as dangerous and powerful beings who were sometimes friendly to humans, but could also be cruel or mischievous. Fairies are usually conceived as being characteristically beautiful or handsome and having lives corresponding to those of human beings, though longer. They have no souls, and at death simply perish. They often carry off children, leaving changeling substitutes, and they also carry off adults to fairyland, which resembles pre-Christian abodes of the dead. People transported to fairyland cannot return if they eat or drink there. Fairy and human lovers may marry, though only with restrictions whose violation ends the marriage and often the life of the human. Some female fairies are deadly to human lovers. Fairies are said to be of human size or smaller, down to a height of 3 inches or less. Female fairies may tell fortunes, particularly prophesying at births or foretelling deaths. Several herbs, especially St. John's wort and yarrow, are potent against fairies, and hawthorn trees, foxglove, and groundsel are so dear to them that the abuse of these plants may bring retribution. And I always just envisioned, like, I was obsessed with foxgloves. as a kid.
Yeah.
I was, well, I would say like teenager, preteen teenager, because I went through like this whole phase of I was obsessed with fairies. Like I had like all the little posters, and
Yeah.
it was like a whole thing. I think we tried to grow foxgloves at my house at one point in time, because it's like it looks like they're little hats that they wear.
Yeah.
Um,
I love that when you Google foxgloves, the flower comes up, but also the brand Fox has gloves.
As we have previously learned, springtime is the time of year when the fae are most prevalent. Beltane, more specifically, is when the veil between the two worlds is the absolute thinnest. And that's in episodes way on back when we covered all like the pagan holidays and stuff. Traditionally in European folktales, the fae folk keep to themselves unless they want something from the humans. I do want to note, and we'll get kind of more into it, I'm sure, that they are typically deemed as sneaky, tricky, and not to be taken lightly. I honestly wouldn't even mess with them at all. Do not make offerings or promises that you are not absolutely 1,000, 1,000,000, 1,000,000,000,000 infinitely positive that you can follow through completely on. Once the promise is made and not seen through, I put the F word, I'm not going to say it. These little turds can get downright unruly and make your life hell in ways that you could never imagine. Fae do not take gifts. Everything offered to them is trade. I just wanted to start this out with that little tidbit before we go too far, and I think Brittany's going to get some into that as well. Yeah. To me, the Fae are as old as the old gods. They can be spirits of nature that help them, or to help bring out about the beauty that we see around us year round, or they can be tricksters. So think of it in terms of, if you're familiar with like the Tinkerbell movies, how you've got the different kinds, and they're each there for something, but they bring in the different seasons.
Yeah.
They can be...
I gotta get that out from under my phone.
They can be violent and do not typically see good or evil. A lot of times they will manifest in a big point in one's life and live in an area where two worlds connect, places like the forest. They live forever unless they are killed or decide to become mortal, which is rare. I know that I have met a few quote unquote people that I've had my suspicions about. Like, you know, you just meet somebody and you're like, there's something weird about you. Like, you just don't look.
I'll definitely get into that.
Okay. Well, like, for instance, I'm going to go ahead and put this out there. 1 year, one of my children had a soccer coach whose wife, to me, I'm like, for sure, like, I thought she was like a lizard person.
Yeah.
Like, it was just, there was something about her that just was off. And she wouldn't make eye contact with me, like, ever.
Yeah.
Anyway, just like there are different types of humans, there are different types of fae. They are able to change their appearance at will, even becoming an entirely different species of creature altogether. So think of that next time you see a wild animal scurrying about in the woods or in your yard. The idea of the other world, where these fairies typically dwell, changed from a place of beauty, eternal youth, and prosperity to a place of torment, where the fae, devil, and demons were all the same when Christianity among the Celtic people came about. When researching into the fae, you will come across two phrases, seelie and unseelie. Seelie came from the word selig, meaning blessed. These two phrases help identify and label the temperaments of the fae. Seelie refers to nice, cheerful, friendly, and even helpful ones. And then the unseelie, they're the hostile and wicked ones. They're the ones who enjoy torturing and harming humans and are easily offended and should never be dealt with. Now again, neither of these groups are good or evil. They all require and demand equal respect. When or if you speak to them, be respectful, but also very mindful of what you say and how you say it, and the tone in which you use. Make all efforts to not offend, because you never want to have to apologize to them. Never, never, never tell them your name. Names for them are a very powerful thing. So let's get into the lore. In parts of England and Britain, it is said that if a baby was sick, that it would probably be a changeling left by the Fae. If you leave it on the hillside, its people will come reclaim it. That just sounds like an excuse to not have to deal with a sick baby.
Right.
Stories also tell how it is possible for the human race to visibly see the Fae. It is believed that if you rub a mixture of marigold water around your eyes, you will be able to spot them. Also, if you sit under a full moon in a grove of ash and oak and thorn trees, you will see them appear. I don't know where you just find a grove of ash and oak and thorn trees.
They're somewhere.
So are these creatures truly a real thing? I feel as though that it is much like any other concept of faith. Just like any religion where a deity is worshipped, do you have faith in that which you have not seen? However, there are books that tell of early cave drawings that depict fairies. But the fairies, as we today know them, do not appear in literature until the late 12th century. Ready for this? In the Canterbury Tales.
Oh, nice.
Geoffrey Chaucer advises that people did believe, but by the time the wife of Bath tells her tale, who is a main character in the tales, I had to Google it because I don't remember what it was about at all. They no longer thought that they were real. Did we ever actually read it, or did we just memorize the first part of it?
I think we just had to, I think we read part of it, but we had to memorize the first.
That was a senior English project that we had to do.
I ended up, because my memory is so awful, what I would do when I had to do something like that for an assignment, I would record myself saying it and then listen to it when I went to sleep.
Yeah.
Because that's why I know the first Harry Potter book so well. Audiobooks.
So, and this is something my kids recognize. Have you ever seen just a random ring of mushrooms growing?
Oh, yeah.
Come to my house.
Yeah.
I have several. Maybe around a tree, or perhaps you've been hiking and come to a lone tree in an open area of land. This is most likely a sign of the Fae. Now, lore does indicate that if you enter said fairy ring, you must dance with the Fae until you go insane or die of exertion. But I will say, I've never been forced to dance or have been trapped when I find myself accidentally standing in the middle of one of the mushroom circles in my yard. And believe me, I always have a ton. I have minimal 3 to 4 rings in my yard.
Well, Daniel didn't believe me about it until, he was like, I've never seen that in my life. And then he comes here and there's, a shit ton of.
Right. Bring it to my house.
Also,
once it starts warming up.
I'll hit on another, ring situation.
And what's funny, and to kind of tie in, the fact that I wrote this episode and the day after or the next day, there's evidence of stuff like this in my yard. Yeah. I sent it to you.
Yeah.
It was crazy.
I almost didn't see it.
Right.
It blended
My sister did too.
But
I had to edit the picture and circle what I was trying to show her.
Yeah.
It's random brown glass.
Yeah.
I don't know what else it would be from. In a random spot in my yard that there's no reason it was there.
It wasn't beer bottle glass.
No.
Because
it almost looked like a honeycomb.
That's either, beer bottle glass is either clear or it's a dark brown.
And this was not dark.
No. It was an amber color.
Yeah, it was just hanging out between a tree with a couple acorns in it, mixed in with it, next to a cluster of buttercups. Yeah. It was the strangest thing I've ever seen. I saw it and I was like, I appreciate the gesture. I physically said out loud, I appreciate the gesture, but no thank you.
Yeah.
Anyway, back to the mushroom circles. I see this as a sign of good luck that I find these. However, the amount of these in my yard and the amount of luck that I have had do not equal out. The mushrooms outweigh by far. It is, however, not recommended that you enter these rings on purpose. However, if you are interested in working with fairies, meditating next to one can help you build that connection. If you are in fact looking to work with fairies, please make sure first that you know how to protect yourself and how to banish those little buggers if it goes south. Also, keep in mind, they do not easily trust the human race, so this connection could take some time to build. It's building a relationship. And any good relationship takes a while to build unless you're a lesbian of the U-Haul type.
Yeah. Y'all just hang out in front of Home Depots
for like 5 minutes and then we're moving cross country. Y'all, we're not being hateful by any means.
No.
All right. But that's what I got.
Those TikToks, like any TikToks that's like that, like they'll make fun of themselves and they play the Home Depot theme song while they're moving. Is that all you had?
That's it.
All right. There'll be some overlap, but it shouldn't be too much. And I think some of my stuff is a different take on
and what you're gonna find, it's a lot. I mean,
I think a lot of it is up to interpretation.
Right. And two, there's no one way to do everything. Right. It's not.
But I think there's like a general list of things you should not do.
Right.
So I've got a do's and don'ts of encountering the Fae. Some of this stuff came from a website called Fairypedia, which it'll be linked in the episode notes. And I had to kind of clean it up because like another source contradicted some of that. It's wishy-washy. So on Fairypedia, which will be linked in the episode notes, they list about 24 things to keep in mind if you encounter the Fae. Firstly is, like you said, be polite and respectful. Not only is this just a universal skill to possess, it would keep you in the good graces of the Fae, whether or not you want to work with them. When speaking directly to a fairy, speak with politeness. Rudeness will only cause you trouble. Do not go out of your way to insult the Fae. Should you accidentally offend a Fae, apologize with meaning. It is possible that they still won't forgive you, though. The assumption that all fairies know one another can be quite offensive, so you should avoid making that assumption. The Fae really like shinies, much like Slick.
Slick is a bird.
Yeah, he's the office HR at work. So, as offerings to the Fae, if you choose to work with them, they appreciate not only like sweet treats, but shinies too, and natural gifts, and they love honey.
We've said in a couple other episodes when we cover like pagan holidays, milk and honey.
Yeah.
Remember that time that I gave Loki honey water because he had a cough going for him and he like loved it and got really bougie about not wanting to drink regular water? Maybe he's a Fae.
Maybe.
That explains so much.
So what I found, fairy lore says that you shouldn't walk into a circle of mushrooms as they are spellbound. And additionally, dark rings of grass should be avoided, which I have a lot of those.
Yeah.
Particularly back in that back corner of the
I've
yard.
always thought that maybe it had something to do with your septic system.
No, mine's nowhere near my septic system. So, I don't know. Another thing to keep in mind if you decide you do want to work with the Fae is to not carry cold iron on you. But if it is iron that has been shaped into something else, such as like steel or wrought iron, it will not be fatal to the Fae. And try not to say thank you. This is highly offensive to the Fae, and instead you should say you are most kind, or I appreciate your help, or / act of kindness.
That would have been good to know when I was telling them no thank you.
Yeah. I mean, I've done the same thing. This expresses a sense of gratitude. Additionally, you do not say I'm sorry, but instead say my apologies, pardon me, or I express regret. In terms of the Fae, nothing is simply black or white. It is all gray. It is important to remember that when speaking to the Fae, they are literal and mean everything they say. So you should listen to them closely and carefully because they may be saying more than they will let on. And the Fae are manipulative and will easily twist your words, and you will most likely regret what you asked for. If the Fae really like you, you can get them to promise something and actually stick to it, even if that means they will die. The most powerful statements are a fairy's promise and you have my word. It is possible to create a contract with the Fae, which will create a bond between both you and the Fae. However, you need to do something for each other. Fairies excel at finding loopholes. The example on Fairypedia says you say they can't cause you any injury, and then they bite you, explaining the fact that they simply chose to take injury as meaning verbal insult instead of bodily harm. Again, very manipulative.
Mm-hmm.
The Fae are able to use a glamour, which is meant to confuse or mislead you if they desire. When going for walks or exploring in wooded areas, if you get the overwhelming sense of not being welcomed, then you should leave immediately. This means that the Fae that are there likely feel threatened by your presence, and they do not want you there. And if it isn't the Fae, it could be something else entirely.
Demons.
Right. Fairies can not only be in nature, but there are also urban fairies as well. Branches from, and I'll get a little bit more into that a little later. Branches from hawthorn trees not only have protective abilities, but they also lure fairies, giving you the opportunity to see them. On the witcherfanon.fandom.com website, they offer some other suggestions when encountering the Fae. Don't ever accept any gifts from the Fae, and if you do, you should be careful if the giver of the gift is a Fae. That's a little redundant. I don't know why I said it that way. But anyway, the best course of action if you do not want to accept the gift is to destroy it. This sends the message that you do not accept their gifts, particularly if you are dealing with a strange new fairy. Do not lie to the Fae. They hate liars that are also not Fae, that are not also Fae. So they can lie to each other, but they don't want you lying to them.
Right.
You should always keep your word when you are dealing with Fae, as they also hate cheats, or those who simply cannot keep their word. Secrecy is key with the Fae, and you should never brag about your interactions with them, particularly with brownies. Failure to keep your trap shut will likely cause you to be targeted for bad interactions, which may either be mild annoyances or life-threatening situations in some cases. It is best to warn any Fae that may be outside that you plan to dump any muddy or dirty water, as they hate dirty water. Without warning, the Fae may become mischievous or again put your life at risk. Unless you have permission, you should never spy on the Fae or try to capture them. This is considered to be extremely rude, and they hate it. You should never give a fairy your name, like you said. If you are familiar with the elven naming ritual, you know that names hold tremendous power. And if a fairy asks for a human's name and they give it to them, they are giving them power and maybe even control over them. And the best course of action in this situation would be to either give them a fake name or just a made-up nickname. But if the human knows the fairy's name and they say it, it could possibly bind the fairy to them or make the fairy leave them alone entirely. I have recently, as I mentioned, it was in the last episode, I think. I've recently started the ACOTAR series. And this rule was one of the most talked about in the first book, is do not accept any food or drinks that a fairy tries to give you. It is normally enchanted, and if the person is within the fairy realm, it could bind that person to the world and force them to stay there forever. Another consequence that could develop from eating fairy food could cause them to lose their hunger for normal human food, meaning that unless they had a continuous supply of fairy food, they would not only not be able to return to their normal life, but they would also eventually starve to death. Um, and I did mention the iron thing earlier, but like if you carry iron with you, like just regular iron, unforged iron, the Fae will avoid you. But let's say you want to work with the Fae. Personally,
No, thank you.
couldn't be me. But if you want to work with the Fae, not only should you be aware of what to do and not to do when encountering them, there are specific things that you can do that will win their favor, such as offerings like honey. This can not only get you out of trouble with the Fae, but it gains their favor. It attracts them. It prevents fairies from giving you any trouble. They like cakes. They like sweet milk. They really just like sweets. And you can also light some candles for them or burn things in their honor. If you want to work with tree spirits, you can give them offerings of plain water or, better yet, moon water. And you can also provide them with nutrients such as meditating with them. For major favor, if you come across a damaged tree, you should do a ritual, pray, perform a ceremony, or hold a funeral for the tree. And according to middleagedwitch.com, every home has a house fairy. If you never deliberately interact with any fairies in your entire life, you should at least try to make and maintain some sort of pact or truce with the fairy or fairies that live in your own home. And this is a mutually beneficial thing to do. And I cannot stress enough, relationships with the Fae are always transactional. She suggests that the best way to interact with your own house fairy or any other fairies is via meditation. She suggests to clean your house, light a candle, and put out a nice little gift for the fairy, and then go into a meditative state. This will allow your mind to open to whatever little creatures are in your home and may be willing to engage with you. She does say that the Fae are often quite shy, and when they appear, it will likely be in your peripheral vision. I had to wet my whistle. She suggests trying to not focus on them when you do see them out of the corner of your eye, and deliberately do not look at them, or definitely do not look at them. They will hide, and you will have to start all over. Once you feel their presence, you can speak to them and tell them who you are and why you are contacting them. Let them know you are presenting them with a good faith gift and ask if they would be willing to be partners with you for the care and protection of your shared home. You can also ask if there are any specific foods or other items they would like. These will need to be gifted to them on a regular basis. This could take quite some time, and you will need to be sure that you are fully open to hearing or seeing the responses they give you. Between you and the fairy, you will decide the terms of the agreement, such as the conditions and duration, as well as what aid the fairy will provide in terms of magical protection. As with all interactions with the Fae, you should be mindful that you aren't doing anything to offend them, as this could unintentionally end your agreement. Offenses could range from failing to make your offering to them on time or even just keeping a messy house. She says, while none of us are perfect housekeepers, it can be problematic when we're trying to develop a relationship with House Fae, to have an especially messy house or to go too long between deep cleanings. This can be considered an affront to the Fae because they absolutely 1000% consider this home to be theirs too. And if they decide that you're not being a good steward of their living space, you may find yourself on their shit list. Incidentally, if you suddenly feel like a lot of things are going wrong around your home all at once, Like maybe the water heater goes out and your garbage disposal breaks and you discover a raccoon in the attic, all within the same span of time. Maybe consider doing a deep clean of your home and then meditating with the house fairy for a while to find out if you've pissed them off and find out what you can do to make it right. Additionally, if you have house plants, they also contain some sort of spirit like a wood fairy or a wood sprite. You can also work with them in the protection of your home, such as keeping out unwanted or unwelcome psychic energy. Contacting fairies works about the same way as with the house fae. With any fairies. Meditate, make an offering, be respectful, and carefully work out a contract that is agreeable for you both. And be sure that you stick with the contract or there will be consequences. When presenting your offerings to the fae, be very clear as to the intent of the offering, as fae are very suspicious by nature, and you want to keep them in your good graces. Upon presentation of a gift for your fae, no matter what it is, as long as it is something they like, be sure to say aloud, "Please accept this gift," which is freely given, or some variation of that. It is very important to be clear and concise. There are many different types of fae, and so the customs could vary between different species of fae, but the basics seem to be a common thread. Don't piss them off. Any questions, comments, concerns, criticisms?
You don't want constructive criticisms.
I don't. I'm perfect.
I mean, like, so I don't even, like, I understand. I fully believe that, every house probably has a house fairy. Yeah. I don't want to work with them, though.
No, and you don't have to. They're just gonna be there, and
they hate me because my house is I clean, I pick up, I
imagine at night when you go to bed,
everything down.
A little fairy is like sitting picking little pieces of dirt out of the carpet and all pissed off at you, cussing.
Girl. I mean, my house is not filthy by any stretch of the imagination. It is lived in.
Right.
I am not one that keeps a Better Homes and Gardens type house.
Oh, hell no.
I have 3 kids and a dog.
Yeah.
My house is never spotless. And they probably hate me. Well, that's fine. I mean,
that's okay. You don't have an agreement. You don't have to have your house clean.
I mean, something definitely lets its presence be known in my house on a daily.
But it's like that same, because she has a podcast and she talks about stuff like that. But this was like a posting on her website, and like she said, I think she works with her house fairy, but she was like, I know if they're not happy with something, because like little things will go missing. She was like, for example, she's like, I know that I did not take off one earring in the kitchen and then go all the way to the bathroom and take off the other.
Right.
And it's just little things like that. So,
and I think if you guys want to hear more about it, revisit it. We've mentioned them in some of our pagan holiday, like I've said. And I think I told this story before, but my sister, one day, one of her remotes came up missing. Yeah. And then she was like, okay, verbally said out loud, okay, this is not funny. This is not cool. Please have my remote reappear. And then lo and behold, she goes back and looks in the same spot she's already looked at 3 times. And there it sits right there in the open. So, that
happened a lot when I was a kid. Like, we would have stuff that would we know we sat it there and it would be gone.
Right.
That happened to my mom's keys all the time. And honestly, I think, she had to come in, but she would yell at us like we did it.
I can't for sure
say we
can't
drive.
Right. I can't for sure say that I've had things come up missing in my house like that.
Or even my dad would put down his wallet, because he always put it on top of his dresser, and the next morning he'd go to grab it. And I think I could be wrong. It could have just been somebody moved it. But like I vaguely remember a couple of times where he'd be like, "Where'd that go?" And it's like in on the kitchen table. And he knows I
You're
mean, he
right.
wouldn't have left it there. But
I can't think of anything that we've ever had where it's like it's been moved or come up missing, like something small like that.
that happened to us a lot when we were growing up. Which I mean that would I mean it is my I mean your house too is surrounded by woods, but
Yeah.
you've also got like a main road, like
On either side.
yeah. So but like my parents' house is like they've got 7 acres.
Yeah.
There ain't no telling what's living out there.
My mom is real bad. She's got a weeping willow tree in her backyard,
Oh,
and
I
there's
love them.
like
I want a weeping willow, but they're so bad.
the
They're
kids.
so pretty,
They are.
but their root systems.
Yeah. The kids call that the fairy tree. And so they'll go out there and, put stuff out there for the fairies. And I'm like, I really wish y'all wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
I really wish you wouldn't, but whatever.
Um,
Yeah, I don't mess with the fairies. We don't leave offerings. I mean, if they leave me presents like they have before, I will just,
Usually I'm just like, oh no.
I see you,
Mm-mm.
but thank you. No,
Yeah.
thank you.
I do have some encounters. I have a few.
Okay.
So when looking for experiences on things such as this, the best place to go was Reddit. Which got me and Daniel fell down a wormhole the other night, and I'm not even going to say the word stagecoach again. But so some of this may not be.
I can't stand you.
Some of these stories, some of it may not be 100% factual. So I advise that you take it with a grain of salt, like I am. But they're entertaining nonetheless. So, Reddit user Real Jake Space Pirate asked, it was about 5 years ago. He said, I've become very interested in fairies recently, and I want to know if anyone can recommend some especially unique, true encounters that I could look into. They went on to say, so far, I have noticed some consistency to fairy behavior. They often like to have circular dances in the forest, treat humans with suspicion or malevolence, often wear the color green, eat some strange type of fruit that if eaten by humans, they'll lose all desire to eat human food, and they might come from some type of alternate dimension, and they might be able to manipulate time. The user received several responses to their request, but a few of the most interesting ones were from Jaja Arolian, or I don't know, said, well, I've had encounters with fairies. They don't seem to be benevolent except when putting on an act to get what they want. I believe that their ancestors were once humans who changed themselves into fairies. It's just another lost arcane technique. I was researching fairies and discovered some bizarre findings, after which fairies started harassing me. It took a while for me to get rid of them, but they haven't bothered me since. Probably learned their lesson. Fairies are like intelligent poltergeists with forms, which he's probably not wrong.
Right.
But a few people came for him and was like, you're wrong. This user ended with the advice to the OP to just read about fairies casually and don't get too into it. Especially don't call on any fairies, even mentally. A now deleted account added that there is a photo of an old shipwreck in East Asia. And in the photo, you can see a decaying med kit. And just behind the kit, there is a grumpy looking face. And it has been claimed that this is a sea nymph of some sort that is keeping an eye on divers to make sure that nothing is taken from the wreckage. This same user went on to say, the one that's most legit didn't happen to me, but to a battle buddy of mine from the army who I'm super close to. They have the ability to see and told me that growing up in New Hampshire, which is thriving, there's plenty of things that live out in those woods that aren't just plants and animals. We've had more than one encounter with more than one thing, but the two things related to fairies would be the trees. On days my battle buddy would wake up early for dawn or be outside till twilight, he could see a woman peeking out. That scared me.
Me too.
He could see a woman peeking out from behind the trees. He saw them, since it was more than one, every so often. He would investigate and find nothing. No tracks, no disturbance of any kind, really. On other occasions, when walking into the woods at a different house in the same state, he had his earphones yanked out of his head more than a dozen times.
Good Lord.
He'd always turn around and they'd be tangled in the tree branches above him, a full arm's length above him. He tested a few different theories: the wind, squirrels, raccoons, pulling on the branches to see how flexible they were, etc. As to how it happened, but nothing made sense. He asked it nicely to quit or he'd take them down. They did a couple more times before grabbing his hatchet to cut it down, before he would grab his hatchet to cut it down. And apparently cutting it down pissed off the guy's dad, though. There were a few more insights into it. Also, the photo that I mentioned, I don't know why. I thought I put it in here, but I guess I didn't. I could not find said photo. It doesn't exist. I don't know where it is. There are a few more insights into fairies and some do's and don'ts, but that was about the gist of it. Otherwise, people were upset that with the OP for seemingly insinuating that fairies were more like Tinkerbell than the creatures that they actually are. On another website called The Raven and the Lotus, user Blythe recounted some stories of urban fairies. She says that it is possible for a fairy to look like a human, but there is something about them that just isn't quite right. She said, it's like a fairy got the human costume perfect, except for that one thing that just doesn't fit quite right. They tried too hard. Maybe, those shoes don't come in that color, or they're wearing the right things, but wearing them incorrectly, or their eyes will glow just a little too brightly. Their teeth will be just a little bit too sharp. Their movements slightly out of rhythm with the world around them, like they're a split second ahead or behind everything. It's like seeing a tourist in your town who did their research. They might not be standing out, but there is enough in their appearance and mannerisms that gives them away. Blythe included 2 stories of her own personal experiences with urban fairies, but I'll just read one, and if you want to read the other, which is she used to work in a coffee shop, and it's a really good story. But I encourage you to go read the rest of that. Anywhere you have a gathering of people where there's food, drink, and music and fun, they are likely to attend. Some are just there to enjoy themselves, and some are there to hunt. This is a story about when it's better to act like you saw nothing. I went to high school in Wilmington, North Carolina. Wilmington has a few fun festivals on the riverfront, like the Pirate Festival. I was walking through the crowds with my friends, and I got the kind of heebie-jeebies that makes your blood go icy and all your hair stand on end. I didn't hear, but I heard something coming. You know that feeling that happens right before your ears pop and all the sound goes dull, but the sound inside your head is deafening? It was kind of like that, but the loudness came from a direction in front of us. I looked ahead and saw something man-shaped, about 6 foot tall, slim, and wearing black clothes. That wasn't weird. What was terrifying was that it was sniffing people as it passed them. I almost put in a Joe Biden joke, but I decided not to. Seemed to have black, smoky clouds surrounding it that acted like an appendage and an extension of its face and jaws, and nobody else noticed. Nobody reacted. They couldn't see it. People would step aside, but not seem to know why, and it was slithering its way through the crowd to my friends and me. It was hunting. I knew not to react to it. If it knew I could see it for what it was, I'd be a threat and a target. It passed us, and as it walked by me, it turned its head and hissed at me. The absolute dread radiating off this being nearly made me vomit. But I acted as if nothing had happened. It kept going the other way. A few steps later, I realized my friends had all gone silent for the whole thing. One of them turned and looked at me with the same fear I felt. Did you see that too? I knew she also saw otherworld beings and had the sense to not react. Our friends just had a bad feeling and asked us what we saw. We told them. Now, this could be just a fictional story made up for the thrill of it, or a dramatization of what actually happened. Maybe, who knows? But it is good. It's pretty good. I'd have been scared.
Right.
I just wanted to add that L. Rowe on middleagedwitch.com said that rather than the Disneyfied version of fairies that we think of, they are much more in line with Jareth the Goblin King from the Labyrinth.
Yes.
She says that this is because she used to think this was just that she never thought she would make that comparison.
Right.
And she says that this is because even though the Fae hold powerful magic, they also have their own motivations and their own set of ethics, as well as their own understandings of contractual obligations, and have no interest in granting wishes just for funsies. She also talks about a lot about this other girl. Was it? Hold on. Okay, yeah. So this is the middleagedwitch.com. She also talks a lot about her own experiences with the Fae in her post, as well as how to work with many different types of Fae. So not just the house Fae, as I discussed previously. It is a really good read, and it'll be linked in the episode notes. My voice is almost gone. It's going. I have the nonprofit of the week.
Okay.
And it is called the Rescu Foundation. It is a 501c3 nonprofit organization established to promote and maintain the health and medical well-being of the participants of Renaissance fairs. It's probably a dog. Or Miss Daisy. Historical performances and other artistic events through financial assistance, advocacy, education, and preventative programs. So this helps people who work Renaissance festivals. There he goes, if you want to look.
I'm not going to lie. I was like, we're responding to the ding dong doorbell thing, indicating that someone or something or a car or something has crossed the threshold
into the driveway.
Into the driveway.
But there will be a link to donate directly to that organization if you feel the need.
Nice. Well, I like it. I was taking a look. We hadn't discussed this in a while. The last 30 days of our downloads and where they're at.
What was that dog? I hate that dog.
We've got the whoever it is, an Oman, whatever, you're still going strong, and I appreciate you. This is 9 downloads in the last 30 days, so I'm here for it. Thank you. We appreciate you. But we've also got stuff in Canada, India, Spain, France, Hungary, and Lebanon.
Oh, that's kind of cool. If we ever decide to do this, we can do. Spreaker now offers a supporters club, which would be a paid prescription. That would
paid prescription.
Supporting us and our content. But the most important part is 100% of the revenue would go to us.
Nice.
So if we ever decide that that's something we want to,
that's
we
cool.
want to do.
I'm looking at the different states. We've got 28 downloads in the last 30 days in Pennsylvania. We want to know who you guys are. Right. We want to know who you guys are because we have some pretty steady downloads in states that neither one of us know anybody in.
Yeah.
So, and it's just crazy to us to really fully comprehend that people are listening to this that don't know us.
Right. Oh, we had a lot less downloads than that earlier.
I didn't look earlier.
Like, just.
Oh, yeah.
It was like.
How many have we had today? Well, in the last 24 hours. So, yesterday, we had 5 downloads.
Yeah. Today we had 12.
And it's only 1:36. What are you people doing?
Well, oh. Yeah. Well, it just depends on what part of the world they're in, too.
This is true. But, hold on. Today so far, I can tell you where they are. Literally Pennsylvania. 11 of those.
Nice.
So whoever you are in Pennsylvania, you're getting caught up, started. How you doing? Let us know who you are. We'll give you a shout out.
Yeah. You know our email address. You've been listening.
Right.
You know our socials.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm here for it. Like, and it just, I know we've said it a million times, but it just baffles me that people listen to us.
That's so weird. I thought it was literally going to be like my sister.
Right, my sister.
Yeah. I don't even. My sister, she was getting caught up. I think she got caught up.
My sister listens every week and then texts me with her notes or calls me with her notes and tell Brittany this, and I'm like, you can get a hold of her just as easy as you can get a hold of me.
That was weird. Something touched my foot.
Oh, that's good.
On that note,
make sure that you are casting your social circles and following us on the Facebook,
Instagram,
TikTok,
X,
and send us those emails, ideas, topics, all those things to our email at wanderersofweird@gmail.com. Oh, yeah. Y'all probably couldn't hear that because one of the last episodes I whispered it and you couldn't hear it.
I love to feel my lymph nodes from the difference between the beginning of the episode and the end.
I'm not going to lie to tell you, you're sitting here reading, which, by the way, I couldn't read along with you because there are no attachments in your email for this episode.
Oh, nice. You're welcome for that.
Yeah. But you're sitting over there reading and you're like feeling of your face with your hand. And I'm like, she's so autistic.
Well, I'm over here rubbing my
No,
lymph
you
nodes.
were literally doing this.
Oh, well, I also have a beard. I was rubbing too.
I just plucked mine the other day.
I've got too much to pluck now. I gotta shave
I just have one or two.
I gotta shave that shit.
But, all right, guys. Well, we appreciate you. Make sure you're following us. Send us those emails. Send us some books on the Amazon wish list.
Yeah.
We appreciate you. Okay, bye.
Bye.